Okay, so we are back with the other module for this course, which is powder processing. So the brief overlay of what are the topics that will be discussed in this module are given here in the slide. So we will have a general introduction, then we will talk about powder characterization, what are the different ways to characterize powder theoretically, and then through characterization techniques, what are the techniques available, and then we will look at powder manufacturing, then we will look at consolidation, compaction and sintering, which is usually the way this powder processing is actually carried out, as we will see. So let us start with definition. So powder metallurgy is the more common term, although we are using powder processing because powder processing is for both metals and as well as ceramics. Powder metallurgy seems like the term limited to metals or alloys. So powder metallurgy is usually defined as the art and science of producing metal powders and utilizing them to make serviceable objects. So this is a very broad outline of what powder processing is, but in particular about metals. So this is talking about metal powders, or it may also be defined as material processing technique used to consolidate particulate matters, that is powders, both metals and or non-metals. So you see the second definition is a little bit more general in nature because it includes non-metals as well. So it is talking about a technique that is used to consolidate powder particulate material, generally powder, which are both metals as well as non-metals, and the most common non-metals that you will use are ceramics. So ceramics are the most other common material class of material that are used for powder metallurgy or powder processing. So let us get some introduction about it. It is not that powder metallurgy is a very modern technique. Like solidification, it has also been known to man for centuries, not even centuries, millenniums earlier. One of the earliest use of iron powder dates back to 3000 BC, and Egyptians used to make tools, and can you realize that we are still making use of powder metallurgy for making tools. So in terms of overall development, we have, although we may have seen so many leaps and bounds, but we are still using similar kind of knowledge base as far as it comes to powder metallurgy or even solidification that we discussed previous to this. Now this modern era of powder metallurgy began when tungsten lamps were developed by Edison. So that is another very common application of powder metallurgy. The filament that you see that is being used in the incandescent bulb is actually manufactured using powder metallurgy technique. So you again take some powder of tungsten and then press it and get the required shape and size, and you can realize that solidification type of technique can be so difficult for tungsten. Why? Because tungsten is very difficult to, or very high melting temperature. So you will require immense amount of energy to melt tungsten and then solidify. Even metal processing technique would be little difficult because having high melting temperature also implies it has very high toughness and very high strength and high modulus. So powder metallurgy is powder processing is one of the most viable route for making these incandescent bulb filaments, the tungsten filaments. Of course now we have switched on from incandescent bulbs to other forms of the light, but incandescent bulb is still a very popular and widely available. Components can be made from pure metals, alloys or mixtures of metallic and non-metallic powders. So again this emphasizes the fact that powder metallurgy is not powder metallurgy, but it is powder processing. You can use metals, alloys, mixtures of metals and non-metallic powders. So that is in fact also one of the advantage, because you are able to mix metals or alloys or metals and powders. One of the most cited example of powder metallurgy is cermets. Cermets is a mixture of ceramics and metals, which is again used for making tools, cutting tools, etc. Now this is a combination of materials which is not possible through any other manufacturing technique. So that is why powder metallurgy has gained so much prominence, because you can, some of the things that you can make through this is not at all possible using other techniques. Commonly used materials for powder metallurgy or powder processing are iron, copper, aluminum, nickel, titanium, brass, bronze, steel and refractory metals. So you see we are mainly talking about here metals, although ceramics are included, but ceramics are all those silicates and carbonates or even other ceramics. We are not going into that because overall the process would remain same, but understanding the science of powder metallurgy would be easier when we are dealing with these metals, because then you do not have to worry about the intermetallic or the inter compound bonds and all those things. So we are only concerned about metal powders and the bonding between the metal powders, metal powders from each other. It is used widely for manufacturing gears, cams, bushings, cutting tools, piston rings, connecting rods, impellers, and the list goes on. But these are some of the most common, and gears are actually one of the most widely cited, as well as the cutting tools. These are the most widely used applications for powder metallurgy or powder processing. So this slide gives you a brief summary of what is the overall process used, and as you will see, this is how our lecture would also proceed, or will also follow the same outlay. So first is the metal powders, or basically manufacturing of the powders. For example, you can make powders by atomization, reduction, electrolytic deposition, carbonyl method, mechanical alloying. So these are some of the methods that are very commonly used to make metal powders, because to begin with you need to make the metal powders. It's not that in nature you get the metal powder as it is. You have to make those very fine small powders, and when we say powder, you should start thinking what is the size that we should be talking about. Is it few nanometers, tens of nanometers, microns, few microns, or even millimeter? Which of these should be called powder? So you should start asking that question, and we'll answer that maybe towards when we start talking about the characterization. Now once you have the powder, you can blend it, you can alloy it, you can have simple pure material depending on the component that you want to make and the design that you want to follow. So you can make it or blend it, and you can also add some additives which will act as lubricants to make the process of compaction easier, which is the next process. Now in the next process you can do is either cold compact and then sinter it. Cold compact is basically done at very low temperature, room temperature, and then sintering is done at very high temperature. They have own purposes. We'll discuss about them in more detail, but it is suffice to say now that in cold compaction you are bringing the metal powders or whatever the powders you have together in a desired shape, and in the sintering what is happening is at the microstructural level. The powder particles are getting bonded with each other to form grains. So these are two different steps, but these can also be combined if you use a process like hot compaction. So in hot compaction, even when you are doing the compaction, you can actually do simultaneous sintering, or basically both the process gets merged into one. So you are doing the macrostructural compaction and the microstructural compaction at the same time. And after this process is complete, when the sintering or the hot compaction is complete, there may be, it's not very usual in powder metallurgy, there may be some secondary operation requirements to get it into the final shape, but most of the time powder metallurgy is called a near net shape process, meaning you don't need to do a secondary process. So which is again one of the advantages of powder metallurgy process. You don't need a secondary process, but if you need secondary process, then that has to be done after sintering, and some of the secondary finishing operations are listed here: coining, forging, machining, heat treating, impregnation, infiltration, plating. So impregnation and infiltration are processes which are probably required only in powder metallurgy, because you will have some amount of porosity, and in some examples, some cases you may want to utilize that porosity is by putting in some oil as a lubricant. So you will impregnate oil into that porous pores, and you would be able to utilize the lubrication properties of, for example, in the ball bearings or some piston. So you don't need to have any additional mechanism of lubrication. So that is again another advantage of powder metallurgy, powder processing. So like we said, here is again brief description of the methodology that is followed. Make fine metal powders and sort it. Sorting is another important thing that you will see when we are talking about characterization. Now you make the powders, but the powder may have a range of distribution. For example, if we are talking You cannot say we have only 10 micron powders. There may be 5 microns also in there, even there may be 100 micron powder. So you have to sort it. You have to, for example, if your particular application you have seen that your compaction is best achieved for a very narrow range of 10 to 20 microns, then you have to ensure that you only get powders of those size range and not anything beyond that. Otherwise, if your compaction suffers, then your properties and microstructure and properties would also suffer. Next step is to mix powders to get alloy. So again, like I said, this mixing is another advantage of powder processing, because you are able to get alloys, not only the common usual alloys, but also the alloys for which you would not be able to otherwise achieve by solidification. For example, for something for which you do not have a solid solution formation allowed. So even those kind of alloys can be formed if you use powder processing just by mixing the two powders. And of course, even non-metals, metals and non-metals. So you can get something like Fe and Al2O3 kind of mixture, or Fe and SiO2 kind of mixture. So those kind of alloys are also possible, which you would not think possible or not very easy to achieve by other techniques, particularly for example solidification. Then what you need is compaction. Like I said, you will compact it in the desired shape, whatever is the shape that you have for the particle. For the component, you will have a die for it. You will put the powder particles together and put it in that die and apply a very large pressure. We are talking about of the order of 100 to 300 tons of pressure. So that pressure, what it does is brings together the particles close enough to each other. And there is some steps going on. For example, if we are talking about metal powders, then first rearrangement of metal particulates take place to reduce the porosity. Then in the second case, some amount of deformation of the powder particles takes place at the surfaces to bring the particles closer and to reduce the porosity. But beyond that, it cannot be done in compaction. In fact, even before compaction, you need consolidation, where you put the powders together to get rid of any air pockets inside it and get rid of and ensure that there is minimum amount of porosity to begin with. So consolidation, which is not listed here, is also a process after alloying or mixing. So mixing, then consolidation, and then compaction. And in compaction, you will get density of the order of 70%. As you can see, it is very low density, but in compaction, this is as good a density you would get, and it will not have sufficient strength when you put the material, and if you apply a small amount of let us say bending stress on it, it will break, and it is called as a green compact, meaning you have just put together, it is just a structural component, you have put it together, but it does not have the final component shape and desired properties. It is just put together for the next step, and the next step is sintering. So you use some controlled atmosphere. For example, you are using very high temperature, so you may desire no oxygen or some inert gas atmosphere, and then you heat the material to 0.75 of its melting temperature in Kelvin. So you expose it to a very high temperature so that the diffusion process and other mass transport phenomena become very active, and it allows the mass to move from one point to another. And as you will see when we discuss more about sintering, that the pores start to get filled because of this mass transport phenomena becoming active at such high temperature, and it is because of them that the particles actually now start to blend together and they start to form grains. So instead of being individual particles with spores, they start to become grains. You will start to see grain boundaries at the interface, and when the porosity is decreasing, it also means that the part is shrinking, and the parts will reduce to some 10 to 15% reduction. There will be reduction in size. The density, when the parts shrink and the porosity goes away, then the density also increases, as you can realize. So the density increases up to 95%. Remember, in compaction we had density up to 70%, but in sintering you may get up to 95%, and this strength and parameters like toughness, these are proportional to density. If you can get 95%, 96%, 97%, those are very good density, and it will provide you as much good strength and ductility and toughness. So in usual or the traditional sintering processes, you can get up to 95%, but if you use some unconventional means like spark plasma sintering, you may get even up to 98-99% of theoretical density. And these are again some of the powder metallurgy net shape parts that are formed, and you can see a most common form is the gears, but even other shapes like cams etc. are available, and the advantage is that it saves machining time. Now when we are talking about powder processing, we looked at the method or the steps involved in powder metallurgy. So it was also time to look at the steps involved in powder shaping ceramics. So when we are using ceramics, and you will see that the overall flow of the process is not very different. So you have to first create raw materials, for example by crushing mills or etc., and then along with some blinders, some additives which will add as lubricants and also as binders, you put them together and give it a forming shape. For example, it can be slip casting, extrusion, pressing or injection molding. So this is similar to our compaction method, and then you do the drying. So this is over here for not really a compaction, this is consolidation, and drying is your compaction. So this is consolidation and compaction that we observed in powder metallurgy process. So when you dry, it gets structural strength, just a sufficient structural strength that so that you can hold it on its own, but it is not the final component and with nowhere close to final desired properties. And then you do the sintering, which is again the sintering that we did in the metallurgy, powder metallurgy process, and over here the particles start to bind together with each other, and then you may or may not require some other finishing operations like machining, grinding or lapping. So what are the processing of ceramics? Crushing or grinding, mixing with additives, shaping, drying and firing the material that you want to give it the final shape to it. So these are the steps involved for ceramics, and as you see it is very similar to that you do for powder metallurgy. So at this stage it will be apt for us to have a more generalized definition which includes not only metals but also other classes of materials. So powder metallurgy, or let us say powder processing, is a process of producing parts from powders of a single metals, of several metals or of a combination of metals and non-metals by applying pressure. The powders are mixed mechanically, compacted into a particular shape and then heated at elevated temperature below the melting point of the main constituent. So very close to the melting point and but less than the melting point obviously. So you will do the sintering operation of the main constituent to get the final desired component with desired properties. So this is not only a generalized definition, but it is also involves all the processes that are also describes all the processes or steps that will be involved in powder processing. So let us look at the kind of equipment that will be required when we are talking about powder processing. So this is one equipment. Like I said, you will need 100 to 300 tons size of press for compaction of the powders. So you can see this is a very huge press, and of course it will be very cost intensive. So that is one disadvantage of powder metallurgy or powder processing, that the initial investment cost is very large. So you have to buy something like this to be able to compact or consolidate the powder particles together. So this is a 260 ton powder compaction press. So this is from this particular company, and it is a very huge and very cost intensive component. And the selection of the press depends on the part and configuration of the part. So if you have even larger component, you may need to go to a even higher size ton press. So this is the usual 100 to 300 ton press, but these are for usual components, small size components. But if you are making a even larger component, then you may have to apply, or you may need a press with even higher tonnage capacity. And this slide shows some of the examples of parts formed by powder metallurgy, although we have shown a lot more, but here it is showing you as classification. So here are some of the automobile parts. So these are various automobile parts that are manufactured using powder metallurgy technique, and again you can see a lot of gear like parts, gear and cam like parts are formed, and planar two-dimensional parts, and these are some mechanical and hydraulic parts that are formed using powder metallurgy techniques. So at this point you would start to note that none of these have very high complexity as far as undercuts or overcuts are concerned, you won't see any part which has undercut. Undercut is something where a part re-enters into itself. So those kind of shapes you do not see over here. And not only that, you also see that most of them have only 2 dimensions. Basically most of them are flat in shape, not any complexity in 3rd dimension. So whatever is the shape in the 2 dimension is what is carried in the 3rd dimension, and that is because you are applying a pressure. So you are applying pressure from bottom and top. So whatever shape that you provide is like this, and therefore the shape that you obtained are 2 dimensional in nature, and it does not have any ability to provide complexity in this 3rd dimension. You can get whatever complexity you want in the 2 dimension, but not in the 3rd dimension. And that is why most of the time the parts obtained using powder metallurgy is said to have 2.5 dimensions, meaning 2 dimensions in the plane and 0.5 meaning some limited amount of complexity or shape in the 3rd dimension. So now that we have talked so much about powder metallurgy, now let us take a look at importance of powder metallurgy, or why is it so important. Some of these things we have already touched upon earlier, but it is a good idea to put them together at one place. The method of powder metallurgy have permitted the attainment of composition and properties not possible by the conventional methods of melting and casting, and the biggest example of this is cermets. So you are able to get ceramics and metals combined together into one component, which is not possible by any other technique including the melting technique. And you may even get like I said earlier, you may even get mixing of 2 parts or 2 components which have very wide melting points. So for example, one may be metal, the other may be ceramic, or even 2 metals which do not have solid diffusivity or solid state solid solutionizing in each other. You can make alloys of those kind. Now powder metallurgy is the only available method for shaping of ceramics. For metals we have seen solidification is one, and in the part 2 of the lecture we will also be talking about metal processing. So metal processing is another technique. So metals have various techniques because they are ductile and malleable, but for ceramics powder processing is the only method that is available for giving them shapes and forming components out of it. Powder metallurgy is an economically viable mass production method for structural components to very close tolerance. So one of the important things that I touched upon earlier was that it is a net shape process. You do not usually need a secondary finishing operation, and not only that, once you have bought a ton press like that, a large ton press like that, you can keep manufacturing large quantities of components of desired shape. So you have to just make new dies of the required shape and you will be able to get the desired shape and any number of shape until the die wears out. So this is an economically viable mass production technique for structural components and close to tolerance and very close to the tolerance, because you do not need secondary operations in most of these cases. You can actually predict how much shrinkage will appear, and therefore you know what will be the final shape and size of the component, even though you will be getting some amount of shrinkage taking place. Powder metallurgy method utilizes lesser energy compared to casting. So now this is another advantage of powder metallurgy or powder processing. It uses lesser energy, particularly when we are talking about metals, even ceramics, and the best example was tungsten. So for example, here you are not usually melting the liquid unless your powder production technique itself requires melting. Let us say you are getting the powder size, the particulates from some technique like attrition, so mechanical attrition or something like that. Then in those kind of methods you are not really melting, so you do not have to take, or you do not have to input energy to increase the temperature all the way to the melting point and then give it the heat of fusion to melt it and then again raise the temperature above the liquid melting point. So you are giving much lesser energy for the processing, and therefore it is a much utilizes lesser energy compared to casting. Powder metallurgy techniques can produce some parts which can't be made by other method, and examples are like this. Powder metallurgy can make possible the production of hard tools like diamond impregnated cutting tools. So again your diamond is your second phase, which has properties very similar to ceramics, and you can impregnate them in a metal phase. So in the metal will have the ductility and the diamond will have the high wear resistance and high hardness. So you will be able to get good hardness and good wear resistance, and at the same time good toughness because of the presence of metal matrix, and this can be used for cutting porcelain, glass and tungsten carbides. Reactive and non-reactive metals can be processed. Now that is again another important thing. You would not be able to get these two kind of materials like the reactive and non-reactive metals together in solidification. They will start to react, but using powder metallurgy you can put them together. And not only that, both having high melting point and low melting point that we have already touched upon earlier, that metals, even though they may have very large differences in melting point, you can process them together. So now it's time to compare what are the advantages of powder metallurgy compared to the other techniques available for manufacturing. So the one of the advantage, in terms of advantage, we can say is cost advantage. And why are we getting cost advantage? Because here you don't have any scraps. Like we said that you put the powder particulates together, compact them and make the design. So you are not really wasting anything. For example, in metal processing particularly, you have a lot of wastage. Even in solidification there is a lot of wastage, although it is recycled, but during the recycling a lot of impurity gets added on. So the cost advantage is not as good as in terms of powder metallurgy when we are talking about minimal scrap. So in here the scrap is so small that it can be not small, in fact it is 0, but that is not true for other manufacturing techniques. Avoiding high machining costs in mass production, as irregularly shaped holes, flats, splines, counterboards, involute gear teeth, keyways can be molded into the component. Now let's take the example of gear, which is the most common example that we know about powder metallurgy. So the gears usually have teeth. Now if you had to do machining, if you had to manufacture it by machining, you will have to machine so many teeth. So there will be a step by step, so many steps involved. For each teeth there will be machining, and then you go to the next teeth, again machining. So it will involve a lot of cost. On the other hand, if you are using powder processing technique, then you have the die of the desired shape and then press it together and compact it. Now then once you have compacted it, you have got a die. You just open it, you take it off and put another set of powder particulates into that, and you get another die, another gear out of it. So that becomes a very easy to scale process. But that is not the case when we are looking at some other technique like metal processing. So these kind of things, particularly the gears, holes, flats, something where you have to do additional machining, those kind of components which can be easily manufactured using powder processing. Now you can see why these are the kind of components mostly preferred for powder processing. You wouldn't see, for example, an engine block being manufactured by powder processing. One, because it is very large, and second, because it does not involve so many of machining process. So that is where the cost intensive is not as much as for other processes, for other components. Another advantage is extremely good surface finish at very low additional cost. Now when you are very close to the melting point, so the surface also takes the contour of your die, and therefore you get a very good surface finish, and that is without any additional cost, meaning you don't have to do machining or even polishing or any kind of secondary operation on the surface. Very close tolerance without machining operation. Again, this is what we have emphasized so many times, that you can predict what will be the total amount of shrinkage, and therefore the final part can be produced very close to its final tolerance, and therefore secondary operations would not be involved. Assembly of two or more parts can be made into one piece. So some of the components which were to be produced separately, you can produce them together if you are using powder processing, because now you can put them in one die. The die can have the shape of the overall component. Separate parts can be combined before sintering, and even if you have manufactured them separately, then you can still sinter them together. That way you are able to avoid the cost. So these are some of the cost advantages of powder processing. We will look at some more advantages and then disadvantages of powder processing in the next lecture. Thank you.